This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Doc and Jock. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me, my guy, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. On today's show, we're going to recap a series that was really eye-opening with the Detroit Tigers. Now, doesn't mean that since they lost 3 of 4 to the Guardians that their season's over. We're going to just assess what we learned, what we gleaned from a series in which I thought that the Tigers would at least at best, maybe or at worst, split with Cleveland, but it looks like the team in the division might still be living rent-free in their heads. But it's good that they're facing another team in the Giants. I think that coming off the heels of a great performance of Tarik Skubal, that you have an opportunity to gain some momentum against the Giants and move forward. But there's lessons learned from failure. There's things to learn when you have expectations and you go up against a division rival, a division foe, and you don't meet your expectations. And then to finish the show, we'll talk about OTAs. Lions finally will get a chance to see the full team on Friday. I'll be out there and we'll get a glimpse. It's not going to be, all that intensive because it's non-padded, but we'll get a chance to see some competition between the vets and the rookies and opportunities for some 7-on-7s, some competition, at least seeing the guys out there on the grass. And that's all you can ask for. And we'll talk about what we want to see, what you want to read about, and also to Aiden Hutchinson. Had a chance to speak to the media, recapping what he said, and obviously, what does it mean for his bank account? Are they going to pay him? Are they not? I want to get Adam's sense of now kind of knowing where Aiden Hutchinson's at. What number, what value would Adam assign Aiden Hutchinson? Because what was your takeaways from the Guardian series? It was unfortunate loss, series lost at home, in front of the home crowd, in front of a European fella who made his trek to the States to finally see the team that he loves. Got to see them lose a couple games, but he got to see Skubal Day. So that's a silver lining. Your best pitcher went out there and dominated and really put forth an effort that clamped down a losing streak. But it was a little bit eye-opening to see that the Guardians still maybe living a little bit rent-free in the Tigers' heads. Some warts popped up in terms of swinging at stuff outside the zone, not being able to bring runners to scoring position, kind of playing in a manner that many people thought might have impacted this team to start the year, like having good pitching but not enough hitting. And that's kind of what happened early on in the series against the Guardians.
Yeah, and I think the thing you said there was the Guardians are living rent-free in the Tigers' heads. To me, this is a team that probably poses one of the bigger threats to this team doing something special this year. And it feels like the Tigers have to somehow figure out a way to get over this team that I want to refer to as a juggernaut, but when you look at them on paper and you look at the record, they're definitely not. But for some reason, they match up really, really well against these Detroit Tigers. So I think there's something there that maybe AJ Hinch needs to kind of figure out. Maybe the Tigers have to work through. Maybe it is Tarik Skubal doing what Tarik Skubal did to kind of close out that series. Maybe that gives this team a bit of a boost and a bit of a jump to where next time they play them this year, it won't be so lopsided. But this was a series where they rolled into it. I thought at least they would hold serve and they would split the series, go 2-2. Instead, they get beat up for the first 3 games, and then kind of on a getaway day, Tarik Skubal pitches out of his mind and just shuts them down. And it was like, okay, well, that's pretty cool. But, I'm not sure what it is with the Guardians. When you go back and you kind of look at what took place last year with this team against the Tigers, the Guardians ended up winning 10 of 18 games. This year, they've already won 3 of 4. So it would stand to reason that for some reason, this is what it's going to take for this team to kind of get over the hump. They're going to have to figure out a way to put the Guardians in their rearview mirror. And again, I'm not sure what it is, what's in the sauce that makes the Guardians show up when they play against the Tigers, and why the Tigers, for some reason, just don't play as well when they play against the Guardians. Now, the other big thing that I took out of this, and I'm going to continue to beat a dead horse, said it, I think, for probably the last 2 weeks. It's the fight that this team shows. They fall behind early or they're getting blown out. Next thing you know, they're scrapping along in this series. Game 3, they're pushing to extra innings. And that's one of those games where you really could have just let it go. You could have just really have let it gotten away from you, and you could have been like, all right, cool, we're going to pack it in and we'll come back on Sunday and we'll pick this bat right back up. Instead, this team's out there fighting, and they're fighting for every out, and they're trying to put as many runs across the plate as possible. So it is their fight that I'm going to continue to hammer home and will continue to resonate with me as long as they're playing this style of baseball. And for some reason, I just can't figure out why they can't seem to get past the Guardians. Do the Guardians seem to be the team that this team has to get over to really be that special team in the AL? Are the Guardians the team that is kind of the roadblock for the Detroit Tigers? Because I don't have any fear with the Yankees. I don't really have any fear with anybody else, though. The Red Sox, you can go through the Central. Obviously, the White Sox don't scare anybody. The Royals don't scare me. So I'm not really afraid of the Texans. There's nobody that really scares me. But when it comes to the Guardians, I anticipated this team taking care of business, and they just seem to struggle a little bit.
Yeah, it makes sense because that was the team that took them to the brink in the postseason, and then it eventually eliminated the Tigers. And especially too with the way, if you remember that playoff game in which Tarik Skubal was expected to do some things, and he gave up a grand slam. Like, they dominated them, and it was a situation in which you saw a baseball team really work hard to meet their potential, but they ran into a buzzsaw. And when the Guardians were able to dominate your best pitcher, that was something to behold. And it's look, you got to get over the hump, and that might be the team. It might be a team that, because what the Guardians do is they're not really overly flashy and everything. They just do everything pretty well. And if you make mistakes, they're going to make you pay. And they were able to come back. The game that probably was the most frustrating was Saturday's. The first couple of games, you just had an offensive drought. It happens. That Saturday game, your bullpen kind of let you down. That typically hadn't happened for quite a bit of time. So luckily, Tarik Skubal was there to kind of end the bleeding. You know what I'm saying? But I do think that they're the biggest threat. I think the Guardians, now moving forward, you got to pay attention to the next couple series against them. It was good because it was important. How important was Tarik Skubal's start on Sunday? Because you don't want to get swept. He also was dominant, ends the game with a 103-mile-an-hour pitch, has what they call the Maddox performance, where he goes for a complete game shutout, and everybody's like, wow, this is dominant. This is what Justin Verlander used to be like. This is what a great player can bring to the table for a baseball squad. So I thought that the Guardians really hit home that, okay, the division's not going to be up for grabs. The division's not going to be that. It's not going to be a runaway. You got to scratch and claw. And, the Twins and Royals are also still there. It's a division in which it's scrappy. It's an interesting division to look at, but I am a little bit concerned, and similarly, I maybe would like to face a lot of teams in the postseason, even the Red Sox, the Yankees, but the Guardians might be something there that there's that one team always there that could prevent you from succeeding. And so I thought that Tarik Skubal's start was dominant and was exactly reminiscent of what some people will say Justin Verlander, others will say, okay, a true number one, but for the Tigers, him going out there and shutting down the losing streak was definitely a plus. It was nice to see.
Yeah, I think it was incredibly important, right? Because you basically sent a message like, this isn't going to continue. It's going to stop here. And the way he did it was just incredibly dominant. I don't think there's another word that you can use to paint what he did on Sunday. It was incredible the way he pitched. And like you said, he closed the game out with a 103-mile-an-hour fastball. Like, that's awesome. That's unreal. The guy went 9 innings and did that. So I think it does a couple of things, right? One, it sends a message to Cleveland like, hey, we're not going to get pushed around. This is a getaway game. We're not going to be bullied. We're going to send our best guy out there. He's going to do his best stuff. Hey, this is our best guy. He's doing his best stuff against you, and he just went 9. What do you got to say? So I think it does that. Plus, I think it invigorates that locker room, and it tells those guys, like, he's the big dog. This is the guy. If this was a hockey team, this would be a guy who'd be wearing the C on his chest. You know what I'm saying? He is the leader of that clubhouse. He's the leader of that pitching staff. He's the leader of that pitching rotation. So he's that guy. And if you want to compare him to a Justin Verlander or like Justin Verlander, I actually would probably go one up on you. I would say he reminds me a little bit more of Max Scherzer. And look, I'm a bigger Max Scherzer fan than I am of Justin Verlander. I think Justin Verlander was very good. I think he was dominant. I don't know if Justin Verlander ever really fully reached all of his potential. But I look at a guy like Max Scherzer, and I look at how he was on the mound. He was a bit of a pit bull. He was a bit of an asshole even. I think Tarik Skubal, with how demonstrative he is on the mound and the way he kind of is, and it's that cutthroat nature, it reminds me very much of Max Scherzer and never wanting to be taken out of a game. When he gets taken out of a game, he's upset. He does not want to leave. I think he's got a very nice arsenal, just like Max Scherzer did. Look, Justin Verlander had that high heater. That was kind of what he built all of his pitches around. But I feel like Max Scherzer was a little bit more well developed. Maybe didn't tip the radar gun as much as Justin Verlander did, but I think he reminds me a little bit of more like Max Scherzer. And I think Max Scherzer was a better pitcher than Justin Verlander. And that's no hot take. That's just what I believe. It's what I feel. So I do feel like he is going to be, if you're a Tigers fan, he is going to be your Justin Verlander. He's going to be this generation's Justin Verlander. He's going to be this generation's Max Scherzer. He's going to be that ace. The thing is, Tigers got to figure out what the hell they're going to do with him. All of a sudden, we've kind of moved into this time frame where the Detroit Tigers are a very competitive baseball team, and it really does feel like their World Series window is wide open. At some point, it feels like Chris Ilitch is going to have to pull the trigger, and he's going to have to pay this guy. If you're not going to pay him, you got to trade him. There's no reason to let him walk, and there's no reason to let him get away for nothing. So to me, it feels like you got to make a decision. You're going to have to make a decision very fast, very quick. And I think it sends a message to the locker room if you do pay him. You know, it says, hey, look, we know where we're at. We are way ahead of schedule. And what we're going to do is we're going to take advantage of this opportunity and we're going to build. This is your ace. This is your guy. If you grew up and you watched those teams in 2006 and 2010, 2011, 2012, you watched those teams. Justin Verlander was that guy. So much so that Max Scherzer, there was a bit of a falling out there because Max Scherzer couldn't get paid as much as Justin Verlander. It was just something that was said inside the locker room, allegedly. Well, we'll put the allegedly on it. Anyways, Max Scherzer ends up leaving and obviously signs a much greener pasture contract that was absolutely ridiculous. But you're going to have to pay Tarik Skubal if you want to continue to build around him. And to me, he just feels like he's your guy. Like he is the stud of this staff. And I think he is just as dominant as Justin Verlander. Obviously, much younger than Justin Verlander was when he kind of started to flesh out a lot of what he became. But Tarik Skubal has all the right stuff, and I think he's going to be an incredibly dominant pitcher. Do you feel like Tarik Skubal is this generation's Justin Verlander, or maybe a little bit more like a Max Scherzer because of his pit bull-like attitude on the mound and the way he is when he gets hauled off the mound? He never wants to leave the game and always feels like you've got the best chance to win with him. Or do you feel like that might be some really high praise, a little bit too early?
No, Bulldog. I mean, he's done it now over a couple years, and everybody's talking about him. Everybody's talking about what he brings to the table, what type of mentality he brings. You definitely see a guy that wants that money. Did you by chance, see the crazy Barstool column that just pissed everybody in Detroit off? This guy from Ohio, Barstool, Nate, I think his name is, went out there and just put out a column that really was trolling. But it was good in that it got a response, in that the message was, and it's not new here in these parts, but it was like, hey, this guy hired Scott Boras. He ain't interested in playing for the Tigers, and the Tigers need to realize they ain't going to win a World Series with him. They need to add more talent, and they should get a king's ransom for Tarik Skubal. And the headline was, the Tigers need to trade Tarik Skubal ASAP. And it just, again, we've talked about it ad nauseum. Every start is lending to people now looking at it and saying, well, he hired the biggest agent. He's not going to back down. It brings it up again, but this was from a trolling perspective where the lazy narratives about Detroit being a crappy town and all that kind of stuff was funny, but in the end, it's still one of those deals where you are caught in the middle because he's 28, he's a Bulldog. He is, I think, the best pitcher in Major League Baseball. It just, to me, it does not feel like the Tigers are going to be long with Tarik Skubal. It feels like you just let him ride it out this year and next year, and you part ways. Let somebody else pay him $40-45 million a season if he wants $400 million. That's if he wants 10 years, $400 million. I just don't know if Detroit is that market. A lot of fans are like, yes, we are that market. We are big. We are big time. But I realize if you can get 5 good players, if you're Scott Harris, you don't think you could land 2 or 3 of them, and the way in which you develop them, I'm leaning more toward not paying it, but I can see why this guy is so ferocious. You win with pitching, and you win with quality at-bat bulldog, quality, just consistent bulldog mentality, and he's one of those individuals. So I'm curious, when you look at it, a guy like that, is he worth it? Is a guy like that, any pitcher that's dominant, number 1, number 2, are they worth? Because now it's a different position, but look at what's going on with the Mets. Unfortunately, Juan Soto is not. It's a different comparison, but Juan Soto's getting paid for 15 years. There's already some thoughts about his performance and what his attitude is bringing to the table. Look, I don't think Tarik Skubal will go down that road of ever kind of lessening his bulldog mentality, but there's always that threat of what's going to happen with his health. So again, hearkening back to what do you do with Tarik Skubal, because he is a bulldog. He is that guy. But I'm not so certain. Is any pitcher at the top of his game worth $40 million a year for many, many years?
So here's the deal. I think if this was a salary capped league, I think we've got a bit of a different conversation that we need to have, right? Because I don't know if any player is worth that much of your roster. It becomes really, really tough to build. And we're going to talk a little bit about this a little bit later on in the show when we start talking about Aiden Hutchinson. With it being a non-salary cap league, I think you got to kind of pay the guy what he's worth. And we've already established how important he is to that locker room. We've already established how important he is to that team and how important he is to the pitching rotation. He is the guy that when you need a streak to stop, he's the end game. He is the stopper. When you need to kind of flip something on its axis and you need to get this team pointed in the right direction, he's the guy. He's your big gun. So I think you have to pay him. Otherwise, what are we doing? Why do you draft guys like this? Why do you bring guys like this to this market? This isn't a small time market, right? Detroit is one of arguably the top 5, top 10 best sporting markets in all the land, right? For baseball specifically, I would argue with it, it's top 7. It's one of the top 7 markets for baseball. I feel like you have to pay him. I feel like if this is where you're going to find out what Chris Ilitch really is, right? You're going to find out what kind of owner he is. Because if he doesn't pay Tarik Skubal, I think it tells you everything you need to know about him. And I think it tells you everything you need to know about where this team is going in the future. And you should show up down at Comerica with your pitchforks, or maybe right out in front of Little Caesars headquarters with your pitchforks and your torch, and demand that he sell the team. You've got, like you said, the best pitcher in baseball. This is a guy who is incredibly important to this roster and incredibly important to what this team does regularly. And at this moment in time, it really does kind of feel like they're arguing over pennies on the dollar. Just pay the man, make a commitment to this ball club, and let's keep moving and let's go win a World Series. Do something that your father wasn't able to do, Chris. Do something that he tried so hard to do. Do something that he sat there and he essentially broke the bank to do. Just be a good owner. That's all we're asking. That's all we want. And to me, it just feels like Chris Ilitch can't get out of his own way because he's too busy counting pepperonis and counting dollars. So look, I think you have to pay him. I'm kind of on the other side of it. I know that you don't like paying pitchers this much money because anything can happen, right? An arm can go out, a shoulder can go out, a back can go out. There's a lot of different things that can happen. I feel like this guy's just too important to this roster, too important to this team. I feel like you have to pay him. You've got to give him what he's looking for. And you've got to keep this. You got to send a message to this locker room like, hey, I know where we're at as far as being in this playoff window, being in this World Series window. We're going to go and get this done. And you got to go get it done. It really does feel like this offseason, it's all we bitched about was them doing things on the cheap. Obviously, working, you've got one of the best managers in all of baseball, and you've got the best pitcher in all of baseball. So you're able to make a lot of things happen. I feel like you've got to take care of what you got. And this is a guy that they just don't come around all that often. I mean, like, you were lucky enough to draft a guy like Justin Verlander. You were lucky enough to acquire a guy like Max Scherzer. Having that pitching combination was absolutely nuts. You've got a guy here who, like I said, it just doesn't happen all that often. And I just kind of devalued my own argument here by saying that you had those two guys. But this is a guy who, to be honest, he was drafted. I don't think much was thought of him. And kind of watching him come up alongside a guy like Casey Mize, who we had all these expectations for, at a certain point, Tarik Skubal started to lap him. We're like, oh, hey, this might actually be the crown jewel in that draft. And thus far, he is that crown jewel in this draft. So I just feel like you got to pay him. I feel like you'd absolutely be crazy not to pay him.
Got it. Understood. And it's a interesting problem to have, and one in which I think it's going to be a dragged out situation. And like I said last time, it feels like every start he's adding $1 million per year more for the Detroit Tigers to have to think about. So we'll see how it plays out. But a series against the Giants should help the Detroit Tigers get back on track. They're still above 500, playing a good brand of baseball. But I do think the warts that are starting to kind of emerge are the offense has to be a little bit more consistent. And how impressed were you with Javi getting all pissed off against the Giants there? Kind of showing some fight and still continuing to be a guy that is a good story for the Detroit Tigers. And look, if you're gonna, I do think that Javi, in that sense, maybe could have shown a little bit more restraint in that situation. And I do think that managers want at least the opportunity to get back out there to calm their guy down. But my goodness, that was one of the worst pitches you're going to see, and it was called a strikeout.
Dude, I loved it. I was
great,
honestly,
right?
I was hoping that he would take his helmet and hit the umpire with it. So, like, I said this to my wife, and she just looked at me. She's like, "What's wrong with you?" And I was like, "Yeah, look, I know it's not going to happen, but I was like, I would be right. I'd be excited if it did. I'd be pumped up if it did." So no, man, I loved it. I loved it, man. I thought it was great. These are you want to see these things. You want to see that fire out of these guys, And I thought his remarks at the end of the game, when he was being interviewed, I thought they were very poignant. He's like, look, man, we're out here competing. We can have a conversation about these things. I can disagree with you. You can disagree with me. Like he said, he's like, you could have said, hey, I just missed it. He's like, and I'd have just went back and I'd have been fine. But it's when these umpires feel like they are the most important, like, people aren't paying to see you. Nobody cares that you're there. Like, you have no idea who these umpires are, right? Like, do you remember Angel Hernandez? The only reason we know Angel Hernandez's name is because he was constantly in the middle of stuff like this. He was constantly trying to be the whole show, and nobody gives a shit about who Angel Hernandez is. He's arguably one of the worst umpires in baseball ever. So, look, man, I was excited to see that. I like seeing that fire and that fight from the guys. And sometimes, just like what Tarik Skubal did, it gives everybody else a little bit of a boost and gets those guys riled up and gets them out there. So I thought it was awesome. I thought it was well worth it. I thought it was well done. Good on him.
All right, flipping our attention to the Detroit Lions. We're going to get a chance to see them on Friday. What interests you at this point in time in regards to the Lions? I know we're going to get a chance to see Aiden Hutchinson probably for the first time on the field. Some rookies now will compete hopefully against some vets. You get a chance to see Terry Arnold, Ennis Rakestraw, the offensive line. It's a lot of good things to pay attention to. What captivates your interest this weekend when the Lions get out there? It's going to take place Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The media gets a chance to see everything on Friday. A chance to talk to Dan Campbell, and all that good stuff will take place Friday.
So I got a couple of things. And first off, it's been the big story. It's what we're going to end up talking about a little bit later on. It's Hutchinson. What does Hutch look like? They say he's been medically cleared for a while now. I'm not expecting him to go 100% in OTAs. You would be crazy to think that. He's kind of in his ramp up period here. But does there look like there's a bit of a hitch in the giddy up? Does he look like he's maybe favoring that leg? Does it look like he's going to be as impactful as we're counting on him to be? Remember, we didn't spend any money on anybody else to go alongside this guy because at some point we got to pay him. So does he look like he's going to be worth that money? And maybe that's the holdup. Maybe they're not sure if he's going to be worth that money. Maybe there's a little bit of a scare that maybe he doesn't perform as well as he did last year. But really, it's to see where is he at in his recovery, and what does that look like? What does that translate to on the field? Next, it's the O-line battles. I want to see if Tate Rutledge challenges to start. I want to see if this is a guy, if he's going to be more of a rotational player, or is this guy going to be starting from day one? I want to see if he takes a veteran's job. I would love it if he took a vet's job. I think that tells you everything you need to know, because it's a very good O-line. Again, I don't think this is the top O-line in all of football anymore. I do believe it is a top 5, definitely a top 7 offensive line in this league. So is this rookie good enough to come in and take one of those vets' jobs day one? I think that right there tells you a lot about kind of the revamping of this offensive line and where it's going to project to be. And then after that, it's cornerbacks. Does Terrion Arnold look better? We're kind of counting on him taking a step up. We're counting on him taking another step forward. Does DJ Reed look like he fits? Does he look like he's going to be maybe that missing piece for that secondary? And then Ernest Rakestraw. Does he take a step forward? Does he contribute to this team? Does he help perform and kind of even and balance out that secondary? Look, this is a guy we don't talk about a lot, and I feel like he could be a huge key to this Detroit Lions defense. Now, it's assuming a ton, right? Because he's got to look. He was injured last year, didn't really get to play. So you're hoping he comes out of the blocks, and this guy looks like he's in his second year. I don't know if that's going to happen. But the thought is, if you can have Arnold on one side, you can have Rakestraw on the other. It'll allow Amik Robinson to kind of do what he does. And then you've got DJ Reed. You've got Brian Branch. You've got Kirby Joseph. Like, your secondary is freaking stacked. If this guy can come out and he can perform and he can challenge a guy like a DJ Reed or a Terrion Arnold for starting reps. And I think that would help level out and help this team push for that Super Bowl. So I myself am really interested in what he looks like and where he's going to be as far as the depth chart goes, because the way we kind of have things penciled in right now, you've got Arnold on one side, you got Reed on the other. I'm assuming you've got Amik Robinson penciled in as your nickel or maybe even your dime cornerback. And then you've got Brian Branch, and you've got Kirby Joseph in your secondary. So where does Ernest Rakestraw fit? You know, where is he at on that depth chart? And is it one of those things where he's like way down the depth chart and he's still kind of got to earn his playing time? Or is he kind of nipping at the heels of, say, a Terrion Arnold or a DJ Reed? So I feel like he is a key cog in this Detroit defense, especially since they didn't pay anybody to help Aiden Hutchinson out. Like, it really does feel like the way Brad Holmes likes to build his defense. He likes having a good defensive line, and then he likes having a lot of pressure on that secondary. That back seven gets a lot of work, and he likes to put that pressure on those guys. And I know that's not the way you and I like to build teams, but that's what it really feels like, the way he likes to build these teams. So is he a key cog in helping alleviate some of that pressure for some of those other guys? And that's my kind of concern. What are you paying attention to? You're going to be out there. You're going to be following these guys. You're going to be posting stuff at Detroit Podcast on Twitter or X, whatever the hell it's called now. You'll be writing articles for SI. What are you most interested in? What will you be paying extra close attention to?
Yeah, I think a lot of things that people want to pay attention to are how the new coaches look like. John Morton and Kelvin Shepard. I do think that what people are intrigued by is there going to be any drop-off? Is there going to be any, pre-snap issues or any mental mistakes that take place with a lot of the new guys? So I just want to see that. I do want to see a lot of the young guys. I think everyone wants to pay attention to Isaac Tesla and the rookies, Ahmed Hassanin. People want to pay attention to the defensive end, Marcus Davenport. And I do think that what a lot of people are interested in is also the offensive line. They want to pay attention to where the likes of Tate Rutledge line up, Christian Mahogany, some rotations. How does that look? And I think what's interesting for a lot of people is going to be the quarterbacks. Kyle Allen's going to be the first time for us to see him slinging it out there. And a question I want to ask you as well is about Hendon Hooker. Because a lot of people talk about him, and they say, okay, look, what does it mean for a backup that's not doing anything to just be a guy that's there holding the clipboard, developing, but really is not going to see the field and is probably at the plateau of what he can accomplish here in Detroit? Like, is the only thing that we can surmise is that he's just good enough to just hold the fort if something happens to Jared Goff? I don't know if you can do that just by being a guy holding the clipboard and practicing. I don't know how that translate to giving anybody confidence if something happens to Jared Goff. But I'm curious your thoughts on Hendon Hooker, like where he's at. What can he showcase? I mean, does he have to have a great preseason then? Does he just have to kind of go out there and run the offense and look like he knows how to play the position? Because I still think there's a massive leap from playing preseason ball to going out there against number one defenses that are looking to take your head off.
Look, I agree with you 100%. Like, live reps are probably the best reps, especially when you're trying to develop and you're trying to kind of push yourself to that next level. I don't know where he fits. And this was part of the big issue I had with where they drafted him, because I feel like you could have drafted a guy to either go opposite of Hutch at that point, maybe a guy you could kind of develop and this year you'd be leaning on, or you could have drafted another guy to help in the secondary or maybe even linebacker, or you could have just did things a little bit different. Offensive line. We love offensive line help here. So I don't know what you do with him because you invested such a high round pick in him. This was a guy who, if he didn't get hurt, I feel like he was going to win the Heisman Trophy that year, but he did get hurt. So it kind of derailed some of that momentum. He ran a very unique offense that I don't think translates well to the NFL. So I don't know what he is. And there was an opportunity last year for him to get put in, and they chose not to. They didn't believe in his ability. So I don't know what he is. I don't know if he is good enough even to be the backup for Jared Goff if Goff goes down. I don't know if he's the guy who can help steady the ship and help you win games or keep you competitive in games where you have guys who can win those games for you. I don't know if he's there. I'm not sure what the hell he is. And what is this? This is the third year that we've had him? We're going into the third season? Dude, I've got no idea. I have no clue. And I think that's probably the biggest frustration when you really break it down. You invested a third round pick in this guy. And when I kind of look at my draft board, my first and my second round guys, those guys are going to be starters. Third round guys are going to play a bunch of snaps and maybe a rotational guy, but every now and then you'll hit and you'll get a starter out of that deal. Same thing with fourth round. That's rotational guy. Fifth round is a more of a back end rotational guy. So like where he was drafted, I'm expecting a guy to play a lot of snaps and a guy to help us win. And this is a guy who's just holding a clipboard. And now we're going into year 3 of him, and I don't know what the hell he is. I have no clue, dude. I don't know what you do with him. I don't know anybody who would even be willing to trade for him. I don't know. I don't know what you could get for him if you were going to go that route. As far as your backup quarterback goes, obviously it's important. It's good to have that guy in the room. Specifically, I think you kind of feel the same way I feel. You would love to have a veteran presence in that room, a guy who might notice something on film, a guy who I'm not necessarily saying push or challenge Jared Goff, but a guy who could maybe give a different perspective, a guy that Goff could kind of bounce something off of. Dan Orlovsky kind of came out and talked about what Sean McVay did when Jared Goff got drafted. You're maybe looking for a guy like that. You know what I'm saying? Not show him how to read tape per se, but say, hey, I've noticed this. I know when they do this, they this is what happens. You know, a guy to kind of go back and forth with what as you strategize. I don't think Hendon Hooker is that guy. You know, I feel like Hendon Hooker might have been brought in, and maybe that's Jared Goff's job to kind of do that with Hendon Hooker. But again, we're in a Super Bowl window. We're trying to win a Super Bowl. I'm not trying to necessarily develop Hendon Hooker and make him the next quarterback. I'm trying to win the Super Bowl now with Jared Goff. So again, his role on this team is very undefined to me. And it is frustrating to know that they wasted a third round pick. And I don't know what he's going to ever be. And I don't know if he'll ever be anything more than a backup quarterback. And I don't even know if he'll be a good backup quarterback. So I'm not 100% sure what what that is. And look, I'm going to say something. You could tell me that it's blasphemy. I feel like a guy like Jameis Winston would be more useful than a guy like Hendon Hooker. Jameis Winston, for all of his faults, all of his crazy stuff that he says on a microphone, for all of the interceptions the guy is going to go out there and throw, he has shown that he can win you a football game, especially when it's in spot duty, especially when nobody is ready for him to come into a game because the starting quarterback goes down. He has shown the ability to win football games. Yes, he's shown the ability to lose you football games and has shown the ability to be a highlight reel for some of the dumb shit he says, but I feel like you would be in a much better spot with a guy like him than you would be with Hendon Hooker. I just don't know what Hendon Hooker is. What would you do with Hendon Hooker?
Right. It makes sense, but Jameis Winston is with the Giants, I believe, and
that's correct.
He's got a new team, but it makes sense what you're saying. Somebody with some experience, so that's why Kyle Allen's interesting, but not a lot of pedigree. So I just think that it's just kind of like if he's on the bench, that's a good sign for the Lions. Basically, it's like, okay, that Jared Goff's healthy, he's playing well, and you just need him to develop little by little so that he can just be serviceable. And basically just you if he gets in the game, you neuter him, you just say, hey, hand the ball off to Gibbs, hand it off to Montgomery, short intermediate passes to Laporta and Amon-Ra. It feels like there's enough talent to be able to kind of manage a game. So that's where you get to a point where he can just be like a Trent Dilfer and manage the game and see if he can extend plays and actually be something where you can then trade him for at least a third-round pick. So we'll see. We'll see how that looks. That is something definitely to pay attention to is what does Hendon Hooker look like? What is he doing? Does everything start to evolve for him in his third year? But then the biggest question mark now, cuz, is that Aiden Hutchinson is cleared. And he's been out there. He's been doing his thing. And he is somebody that is free to resume football activities, will be part of the team, is going to continue to steadily up his workload all the way through training camp, and will probably be around 100% at the time that the season starts week 1. So the biggest question that now everybody's going to evaluate and discuss, the national media is talking about it, everybody's wondering, because it's similar to Alex Anzalone. Alex Anzalone probably is not going to participate in OTAs. He is a guy that is experienced. He's looking for a new deal. It probably will happen, but it's a situation in which you could look at it from both sides. Aiden Hutchinson is going to command $40 million, maybe even a little bit north of that. But we don't know. We don't know what he looks like against top-flight competition in this new era post his broken foot. He's had a couple injuries now, but he looks like a guy that you feel reasonably 94% comfortable giving him $200 million. But there's some that are reasonable and say, you know what? He's under contract. You can be a little bit firm, but you probably would alienate your best player. You would send a signal to the locker room that, whoa, wait a minute. This guy still led your team in sacks and has all the potential in the world, only 24 years old. Problem is the market. The freaking Browns fuck everything up by resetting the market on these guys. And the market now for a defensive end is $40 million. So do you go 3 years, 120? Do you go shorter term? Do you say to him, look, we trust you, we love you, here's 5 and 200, a lot of money guaranteed, you just take that risk? It feels like they're lining up to just give it to him, but I understand those that message at Detroit Podcast and message, in emails and send us these things and say, wait a minute. There's a chance he goes out there and is not a $40 million a year player. Maybe he's just an inch slow. Which now these new young offensive linemen, they're hungry. Just a quarter step slow might be the difference between 15 sacks and 8. Where are you at now? Do you just say, hey, you earned it. You're the guy that we've stamped as the guy. You are the highest paid or near the highest paid. Do you go under it? Do you offer him under? It feels like it's going to go, a negotiation is going to go until training camp, but it has all the feelings like the Lions are going to pay it. But I understand those that are like, there's a little bit of a risk that this guy might not be the same player because of his injury.
So here's the deal. Let me give you what Pro Football Focus has put out for top 10 edge defenders, and let's kind of talk through some contracts, right? So Myles Garrett, they have as number 1. Obviously, you just brought that up. They reset the market. He's getting $40 million on average per year. Micah Parsons, number 2, TJ Watt, number 3. So those two guys are waiting to sign new contracts. They're probably waiting on Hutch. It kind of feels like Hutch and those two guys are kind of all in the same boat, waiting for the next guy to go because the market's going to get reset. After that, they've got Nick Bosa as number 4. Nick Bosa, approximately $34 million per year. Aiden Hutchinson they have as the 5th best edge rusher. Max Crosby as number 6. So Max Crosby just recently signed a contract, $35.5 million per year. Trey Hendrickson, you already know about the woes there, trying to get him here, trying to pay him some money that he's looking for. Jared Verse still on his rookie contract. Then Will Anderson, I believe he's still on his rookie contract as well. And Khalil Mack, he's an older vet who's down the line there. When you go and you look at the money that these guys are making, right? We talked about Myles Garrett resetting the market at 40 mil. Danielle Hunter's right there at 35.6 mil. Max Crosby's 35.5 mil. Nick Bosa's 34 mil. And then you kind of start mixing in different positions on the defensive line. Here's my thing. If you are the Detroit Lions, do you start your contract offer right around 37.5 mil? Do you go to Aiden and you're like, here, man, look, 37.5 mil. We're going to front load and make a bunch of it guaranteed for you. Yeah, obviously, you got to work numbers around here because you've got a bunch of big deals coming due over the course of the next 3 years. And at some point, you're going to have to restructure Jared Goff's contract. But do you come to him and you're like, here, we'll give you a bunch guaranteed. I think when you look at the most guaranteed, Nick Bosa was $88 million guaranteed. Myles Garrett was a little over 59 guaranteed. Max Crosby was 62.5 guaranteed. Do you come to Aiden Hutchinson and do you say, look, 37.5, I don't know, you want to say 75 guaranteed? And then you can kind of figure out numbers. So when stuff starts hitting, it's hitting when other guys' contracts are coming due, and maybe you negotiate to there. Because they have what? I think we've talked about. I think they've got something like 44 mil is what they've got available as far as cap space goes. So I don't know why you couldn't start there and maybe try to end right around there. And that's probably what I would end up doing. Is I would end up doing something along those lines, starting at 37.5, trying to give him a bunch of guaranteed money to help entice that deal, and then work the numbers to whereas the big contracts that they've signed for guys like Penei Sewell, guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, guys like Jared Goff, guys like who else has signed a big deal recently? When those bigger deals start to kind of hit, or Kirby Joseph, that's another one that has a big deal coming due. When those big numbers start to kind of hit, you can kind of stagger how they hit your cap space, and that way it doesn't decimate you and doesn't hinder what you're trying to do. That's what I would do. That's where I would go. I would start 37.5, try to give a bunch of guaranteed money and try to manage my cap space that way. What would you do? How would you go about doing this?
It's so interesting. Both you and Christian gave out the 37.5, not meeting Myles Garrett, but still a hefty amount. I think that's fair. If you're Aiden, seriously, like you already make a lot of money potentially outside of football. You're going to have endorsements. Do you really have to be market setting? I know the NFLPA wants that, and the people in football want that because when you take less than market value, you don't push things ahead for the players. So that's going to be tough because the player also feels a responsibility to at least match. So I think they're going to match it. I don't think they're going to exceed it. I think they're going to match it. I think they're just going to give him maybe more guaranteed dollars. I don't see. Because he's 24, I don't see him going, I'm not as good as Myles Garrett. I think he says I'm almost can be better over the course of over a couple years. And then quickly, the problem's going to lie in 5 years. If he's getting 16 sacks, all you're going to do is reshape it anyway. Mm-hmm. So might as well make him happy, try to work within the parameters of getting it where you can get option years and get the cap number lower the first couple years.
Here's the thing, though. So you like spot rack as much as I do, for cap numbers and just basically information when looking. So they project his calculated market value at 35.3. Oh, so Christian and I coming in above that.
Yep.
The thing is, he is, how old is he? He's like 25, 26?
24. He's only 24.
He's 24. Okay, great. So he's 24. You sign him to a 4-year deal.
Yeah.
You know, you work that 5th year into that 4-year deal. So now it's technically like a 5-year deal, whatever. You're going to have the opportunity on the other side of 30 to
do it again. Do it again. Like Henderson.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you are the perfect age, and you're in the perfect spot to be able to capitalize on that twice.
Yeah.
So like to me,
or maybe you take short term
between 35 and 38 is kind of the sweet spot.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And you could take a short term deal, and if they say, okay, you want 42, take a 3-year deal, then just go for it big time in 3 years. When you're 27, then you break the bank. You know, you get a 5-year deal, probably 250. You know, so there's opportunities. We'll see how it plays out. But by and large, I think you and I are in agreement that some deal is going to be made in that neighborhood of big time money. I think it happens, right? Before training camp, that they at least come to some sort of agreement because of how good this football player is.
To be honest with you, man, I'm surprised that it hasn't been completed already.
Yeah.
So
it's a lot of numbers, man.
I'm expecting it to come down the pike here soon.
Yeah, maybe this week. Maybe by the time this podcast drops, Aiden will get paid. But let's just hope, that we're arguing for a player that still can get over 10 sacks and be that guy that can show that Brad Holmes was right to not go out and break the bank for somebody else, because that's a big time thing, and it's one of the biggest positions of need, and the Lions are banking on Aiden to be that guy. So we'll see how it all plays out. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSCharles. Follow us at Detroit Podcast. It's the hub where you can get insider information about the Lions and daily content, daily podcasts looking at all things Detroit sports, Michigan football, professional wrestling. Always good times. Thank you guys for keeping us in the mix for all these years in the world of Detroit sports. And now, finally, after 630 episodes, there's a renaissance in Detroit. There's playoff wins. There's talk of development. There's talk of adding free agents, big-time contracts. It's the best spot to be in. It's the best time to be podcasting and talking about Detroit sports. And I'm always thankful and grateful to spend some time with my guy, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. Hit us up, again, at Detroit Podcast, anywhere you listen to podcasts. Find us, Detroit Sports Podcast, and we'll find you guys. And we enjoy the banter. Keep it classic, keep it respectful, and look forward to breaking it all down next week on the next episode of Doc and Jock.
You fucking podcasters. I said don't let them in here.